A rich man rescued a woman during an Alaska storm, then walked away. Daniel Frost learned to measure time by what he did not do. He did not rush. He did not speak unless necessary. He did not stay where his presence might complicate someone else's survival. That rule had held for years, until the moment it did not. The storm began after he had already decided to leave the road. It was not dramatic at first. No sudden white wall. No cinematic collapse of the sky. Just a tightening. Wind leaning harder against the trees. Snow shifting direction. The kind of weather that does not announce danger, only erodes margins quietly, mile by mile. Daniel slowed the truck. He did not turn the radio on. He never did. A shape appeared ahead, wrong in its stillness. A vehicle pulled too far to the shoulder, its rear wheels half buried. A woman stood beside it, her hood up, one hand pressed against the door as if the metal itself were keeping her upright. Daniel stopped. This was the moment where most people made a calculation and called it instinct. He did neither. He reached for his gloves. Then he noticed something small and precise. The woman was not waving. She was not signaling for help. She was holding something dark in her bare hand, staring at it as though it had arrived late. Daniel opened his door. The wind struck immediately, sharp and efficient. "Stay where you are," he said, not raising his voice. She looked up. Her face registered surprise, not relief. That detail stayed with him. Her name was Lena Harper, though he did not know that yet. What he noticed instead was the timing. The object in her hand. A phone, dark screen, battery long gone. The way she folded it into her pocket without asking him for anything. He crossed the distance between them in a few steady steps. Snow had begun to gather against his boots, already choosing which edges to erase. "Car died," she said. 2 words. Functional. No explanation attached. Daniel nodded once. He checked the road behind them. Empty. Ahead. Visibility thinning. He placed himself between her and the wind without comment and opened the passenger door of his truck. "Get in," he said. She hesitated. Not because she was afraid of him. Because she was weighing something else. He saw it. In the pause. The calculation of whether accepting help now would cost her later. The storm answered for her. A sudden gust knocked the open car, doors shut with a sound too final for comfort. Lena moved. Inside the truck, heat had not yet settled. Daniel started the engine and turned the vents low. He did not ask her where she was going. He did not ask her why she was alone. When he drove as if the road was something to negotiate with, not conquer. A mile later, the storm thickened. Snow fell heavier, closer, the sky compressing into a narrow tunnel. Daniel adjusted their course. To her turnoff, most people missed unless they already knew it was there. Lena watched his hands. Steady, unadorned. No jewelry except a watch worn low on the wrist. Its face plain, its glass faintly scratched. The second hand moved with a discipline that suggested it had never been ornamental. "Cabin," Daniel said once. Not a promise. A direction. They arrived without ceremony. A small structure set back from the road, would darken by years of weather. Light already on inside, as if it had been waiting without expectation. Daniel cut the engine. For a moment, neither of them moved. He reached in the back seat and pulled out a thick wool blanket. He handed it to her before opening his door. "Storm will pass," he said. Then, after a beat, "Road will not." Lena took the blanket. Their fingers did not touch. As they stepped into the cabin's warmth, Daniel placed his gloves on the table near the door. Only then did he realize one was missing. He looked back toward the truck. Snow had already begun to erase the space where he had stood. He did not go back for it. Not yet. The cabin held the heat the way it held everything else. Without display. Without excess. Daniel closed the door behind them and locked it once, a habit carried out with the same economy as his movements outside. Snow hit the wood immediately, filling the silence left behind by the wind. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee grounds and dry pine. Lena stood near the entrance, the wool blanket still folded around her shoulders. She did not move further in. Not yet. Daniel crossed the room and added another log to the fire. The flames adjusted. Light lifted along the grain of the walls, finding edges, corners, objects that did not ask to be noticed. A pair of boots by the door. A small table with 2 chairs, neither centered. A shelf of hardback books, spines worn from use rather than display. A mechanical clock ticking without apology. Daniel poured water into a kettle and set it on the stove. He did not ask what she wanted. He poured enough for 2. Outside, the storm settled into a heavier rhythm. Not louder, more deliberate. Lena moved closer to the fire. She held her hands out, palms angled, close enough to feel the heat, but not so close as to claim it. Daniel noticed that she removed her wet gloves before the blanket, lining them carefully on the back of a chair, so they would dry evenly. The kettle began to hum. Daniel waited until it crossed into a full boil before lifting it. He poured slowly, controlled. The mugs were plain, mismatched. One carried a small crack along the rim that had been smoothed down over time. He set a mug on the table near her. He kept the other. "Bathrooms through there," he said, nodding once, already turning back to the stove. She nodded in return. "No, thank you. No explanation." When she returned, her hair was damp and loose, no longer pinned up against the wind. Daniel had moved the chair closer to the fire. He did not comment on it. They sat in parallel silence, not facing each other, not avoiding each other either. The kind of arrangement that allowed space to exist without being defended. The fire worked. The room adjusted. After a while, the sound of paws moved across the floor. A husky emerged from the far side of the cabin, gray and white, eyes alert but untroubled. He paused, assessed the unfamiliar presence, then chose a spot near the hearth and lay down, curling into himself with practiced precision. Lena watched him. The dog did not look back. Daniel drank his coffee. Black. No suga. The storm continued outside, pressing its weight against the walls, testing seams it would not find. The cabin did not respond. It had been here long enough to know what could pass and what could not. Later, Daniel stood and checked the windows. Snow had erased the road completely now. Where there had been direction, there was only white movement. "Road will take time," he said, not as information, but as fact. Lena acknowledged it with a small nod. She did not reach for her phone. It remained dark, forgotten in her pocket. Daniel returned to the table. He wiped it once with a cloth and set out bread, sliced thick, toasted lightly. Butter softened near the fire. The meal did not ask for ceremony. They ate without looking at each other, listening instead to the quiet domestic sounds that survived even here. Bread tearing, wood shifting, the clock counting seconds no one was tracking. Afterward, Daniel rinsed the mugs and placed them upside down to dry. He folded the blanket Lena had used and set it on the back of her chair, within reach but not touching her shoulder. She noticed. Night arrived without announcement. The light outside dimmed, then withdrew completely. Inside, the lamps held their ground, warm and low. The dog shifted closer to the fire. Daniel checked the stove again, then the door. He did not prepare a bed. He did not offer one. He left a folded quilt on the couch instead, neutral, available. Lena stood by the window, watching snow slide past the glass in quiet sheets. She placed her palm against it once, briefly, then stepped back. Daniel extinguished one lamp, then another, leaving only the fire and a single light near the table. He removed his watch and set it beside the clock, aligning them without looking twice. They did not discuss the night. The cabin held them both evenly. Outside, Alaska continued doing what it always did. Inside, 2 people learned the shape of a shared silence, not by agreement, but by repetition. Daniel Frost woke before the light, not because an alarm told him to, because the cabin shifted, barely, the way it always did when night loosened its grip. The fire had settled into embers. The clock marked time without urgency. Outside, the storm had moved on, leaving snow in layers that did not pretend to be soft. He dressed quietly. Wool first, then heavier fabric. Movements economical, practiced. Nothing chosen at random. The kettle was filled before it touched the stove. He set the hand grinder on the counter and measured the beans by feel, not by sight. The sound came first. A low, steady grind. Not fast, not slow. The kind of pace that did not invite interruption. Lena remained asleep on the couch, the quilt undisturbed. Daniel did not look at her directly. He adjusted the fire instead, adding a single log, turning it until it caught cleanly. Coffee bloomed as water met grounds. The aroma spread through the cabin, restrained but unmistakable. He poured carefully, allowing the surface to settle before setting the mug down. Breakfast followed the same logic. Eggs cooked simply, bread toasted evenly, butter placed in a small dish, not because it was necessary, but because order mattered even when no one was watching. He ate standing by the window. The road was still buried. The forest held its shape. Snow carried the light now, reflecting it back in muted tones that made distance harder to judge. Daniel watched for a full minute, then finished his coffee. The husky stirred at the sound of boots. The dog stood, stretched once, then waited by the door without instruction. The harness hung on a hook nearby, leather worn smooth where hands had passed over it many times. Outside, the cold had sharpened overnight. Breath showed immediately. Daniel fitted the harness and checked each strap with quiet attention. The dog leaned into it ready, steady. They moved out together. The sled carried supplies meant for town. Not much. Flour. Mail. A crate secured tightly, balanced for the run. Daniel took the lead position, guiding without force, allowing the dog to set a natural rhythm. The trail cut through trees heavy with snow. No tracks except their own. The forest did not respond to them. It did not need to. They reached the edge of town after several miles. Buildings low. Familiar. No signs announcing importance. Just places that functioned because people returned to them consistently. Daniel stopped first at the general store. He unloaded the crate and slid it inside without ceremony. The clerk nodded once, already moving to clear space. Road bad, the man asked. Passable later, Daniel said. That was enough. At the hardware counter, he picked up nails and a length of rope. He paid in cash. No receipt requested. Outside, an older woman struggled with a frozen latch on her truck bed. Daniel crossed the distance, freed it with a controlled pull, then stepped back. She thanked him. He acknowledged it without pause. No one lingered. He tied the sled again and continued on, stopping briefly. At a small cafe. Did not go inside. He left a box of supplies at the door, knocked once, and walked away before it opened. The return trip took longer. The light had shifted. Snow softened slightly underfoot, then hardened again where shade held. Daniel adjusted his pace without breaking rhythm. Back at the cabin, Lena was awake. She stood near the table, fully dressed now, her movements careful, contained. She had washed her mug and set it upside down beside his, aligning the handles. Daniel nodded once. He unloaded the sled and brought the supplies inside. He placed a rope on a hook, the nails in a drawer already labeled. Nothing searched for, nothing misplaced. Later, they walked the trail behind the cabin together. No sled this time, just boots and space. Daniel took the outer edge of the path, testing footing. Lena followed at a distance that matched his without effort. They stopped where the trees thinned. The land opened briefly, then closed again. Daniel stood still. He did not gesture. He did not explain. Lena looked out, then down at the snow, reading its surface the way someone learns to read weather over time. They turned back without discussion. That evening, Daniel prepared dinner with the same precision as breakfast. Simple, balanced, clean. The routine did not announce itself as healing. It did not need to. It existed. By the fourth morning, the routine had weight. Not heavy, just established enough to be noticed when it shifted. Daniel Frost woke at the same hour. The cabin responded the same way. Embers, kettle, grinder. The husky waited by the door, head low, patient. Outside, the snow had settled into a quieter geometry. The kind that held. Lena Harper woke later. Not abruptly. She rose as if she had been awake for some time already, listening, deciding when to enter the room without interrupting what was already in motion. She did not ask if she could help. She stood at the counter and rinsed the knife Daniel had used, dried it, and returned it to the same place. She did not open drawers. She did not search. When Daniel noticed, he did not react. He adjusted the flame under the kettle instead. They moved through the morning without naming it. Lena ate what was placed on the table. She did not comment on the food. She noticed how. It had been arranged, not for display, but for balance. The way a plate could feel complete without excess. After breakfast, Daniel prepared to head into town again. He checked the harness. He checked the weather. He reached for the rope. Lena watched from the doorway. "I can walk part of the way," she said. Not a request. Not an assumption. Daniel considered it for a moment. He nodded once. They moved out together. The trail was narrower now, packed down by previous passes. Daniel took the front again, testing the surface with his boots. Lena matched his pace without closing the distance. She did not rush to fill the quiet. She did not fall behind to make a point. At the edge of the trees, Daniel paused. He pointed once, indicating where the trail bent toward town. "I turn there," he said. "I will go as far as the ridge," Lena replied. That was all. They walked. Along the way, Daniel stopped to adjust a strap on the sled. Lena waited without stepping closer. She did not hover. When he finished, she continued as if nothing had interrupted. At the ridge, she stopped. The view opened briefly. A slice of land held between trees, white and restrained. Lena took it in, then stepped aside. "I will head back before the light drops," she said. Daniel nodded. She turned without looking back. He watched her until the trees absorbed her shape. In town, the day unfolded as it always did. Supplies delivered. A quiet exchange at the general store. A brief stop at the cafe door. Daniel noticed that Lena's footsteps were no longer beside his, but the rhythm remained. When he returned to the cabin later, the fire was already tended. One log placed, not two. The room held warmth without feeling claimed. Lena sat by the window with a book from his shelf. She had chosen one with a cracked spine, not the cleanest. She held it open gently, respecting the wear. "I hope that is all right," she said, closing it partway. Daniel glanced at the cover. He nodded. She returned the book to the shelf before dinner, aligning it with the others. That night, the wind returned briefly, testing the windows. Lena stood and checked the latch without comment. She tightened it once and returned to her seat. She did not ask Daniel where he was from. She did not ask what had brought him here. She did not ask when the road would fully clear. Instead, she noticed small things. She noticed that Daniel always placed his watch next to the clock, faces aligned. She noticed that he left his gloves near the door, not on it. She noticed that he did not sit with his back to the window. When she spoke, it was to the present. "The snow is lighter tonight," she said once. "Yes," Daniel replied. No further elaboration. As the days edged forward, her presence settled into the space without rearranging it. She took on small tasks without announcement. Folding the quilt, clearing the table, brushing snow from the porch in short, even strokes. She did not correct Daniel. She did not anticipate his needs aloud. She allowed room for him to notice her work when he noticed it. The husky accepted her without ceremony. He moved closer to her chair at night, then drifted back to his usual place. No allegiance declared. At one point, Lena found one of Daniel's gloves beneath the bench outside, the leather stiff with cold. She brought it inside and set it near the fire, not too close. She placed it beside the other glove, fingers aligned. Daniel saw it later. He said nothing. He put on the hook the next morning. There are people who fill silence by asking questions. There are people who reduce distance by naming it. Lena did neither. She occupied the space as it was, and by doing so, made it easier for it to remain intact. Somewhere beyond the cabin, beyond the ridge, the world continued with its noise and explanations. Here, the days passed with a different measure, one where nothing needed to be proven in order to be felt. And sometimes, when a place allows that kind of quiet to hold, it becomes clear why someone might choose to stay there longer than planned. The first words between them did not arrive with intention. They surfaced the way breath does when the body decides it is safe enough to release it. It happened in the afternoon, when the light thinned and the cabin settled into its quieter hours. Daniel was at the table, repairing a strap from the sled harness. The leather lay flat beneath his hands, worn but reliable. He worked with a needle and thread he kept in a small tin, the kind that did not rattle when opened. Lena stood nearby, sorting kindling into a wooden box. She chose pieces that would catch easily first, then heavier ones for later. She did not ask how much to take. She watched the size of the fire and adjusted. The husky lay stretched across the floor, eyes half closed, listening to both of them without choosing a side. Daniel finished the stitch and tested it once, pulling gently. He placed the strap aside. "It will hold," he said. Lena looked at the strap, then at him. "Yes," she replied. Nothing followed. It did not need to. Later, as the afternoon dimmed, Daniel set his boots by the door to dry. Lena noticed snow had tracked in along the threshold. She knelt, brushed it away with her glove, and stood again. "The wind shifted," she said. Daniel checked the window without moving from where he stood. "North," he said. They returned to their tasks. Dinner was prepared without planning. Daniel placed a pan on the stove. Lena reached for vegetables and washed them. There was no exchange assigning roles. The work distributed itself. When the food was ready, Daniel set 2 plates on the table. Lena moved one slightly, aligning it with the chair. He noticed, but did not correct it. They sat. For a while, only the sound of cutlery filled the room. Wood popped softly in the fire. Outside, something moved through the trees, then passed on. Halfway through the meal, Lena paused. "I will be gone tomorrow," she said. Daniel looked up, not surprised, not guarded. "The road should clear," he replied. "Yes." They continued eating. Afterward, Daniel washed the dishes. Lena dried them, placing each one back where it had been. She learned the order without being told. At the sink, she handed him a mug. "Thank you," he said. She nodded. The words were small, functional, but they landed. That evening, the wind rose again, lighter than before. The cabin responded with familiar sounds. Wood adjusting, glass cooling. Daniel stood by the door, checking the latch one last time. Lena sat on the couch, the quilt folded beside her, not over her shoulders. "You can take the bed," he said. It was the longest sentence he had offered her so far. She looked toward the back room, then back at him. "The couch is fine," she said. He waited a moment, then nodded. They turned off the lights in stages. The fire remained. One lamp near the table stayed on. Before sitting, Lena reached into her pocket and placed her phone on the table. The screen remained dark. "No signal," she said. Daniel glanced at it. "It will wait," he replied. She did not pick it up again. As the night settled, Daniel read at the table. Lena sat across from him, not reading, not watching him either, just present. The husky shifted and rested his head near her feet. She noticed, then adjusted her position slightly, so he had space. Daniel turned a page. "I will leave before sunrise," Lena said later. Daniel closed the book. "I know." There was no question in his voice, no concern expressed. She stood and folded the quilt, placing it back where it had been earlier. At the door of the back room, Daniel paused. "If the snow starts again," he said, "wait." She met his eyes briefly. "I will." That was all. The first contact between them did not ask for more. It did not promise less. It existed as it was, precise and contained. In a place where survival often required noise or urgency, they had chosen another method. One built on restraint, on attention, on allowing space to remain space. The cabin held that choice without comment. And in the quiet that followed, it became clear that sometimes the earliest warmth does not come from closeness, but from the absence of pressure to move closer at all. Morning arrived without color. The light was present, but muted, as if Alaska had decided to conserve it. Snow held its shape from the night before, unbroken, unsoftened. The air inside the cabin remained warm, steady, unchanged. Daniel Frost was already awake. He stood at the counter, preparing coffee with the same sequence as always. Kettle, grinder, mug, nobodiaschen. The routine did not respond to the presence of another person. It did not need to. Lena Harper woke quietly on the couch. She folded the quilt before standing, smoothing the crease once with her palm. She did not look toward the back room. She moved as if she already knew where everything was allowed to be. They exchanged no words. Breakfast happened the way it had the day before. Simple, balanced, enough. Daniel checked the weather through the window. The road beyond the trees had begun to reveal itself, slowly, in fragments. Not open, but no longer erased. Lena noticed him looking. "It should clear by noon," she said. Daniel nodded. "Yes." She picked up her gloves. The plan had formed without discussion. She would leave when the road allowed it. He would continue as before. Daniel stepped outside to harness the husky. Lena followed, stopping near the door, not crossing the threshold until he was finished. The dog waited steady. Daniel checked each strap. Then he paused. The sled behind the dog was empty. Lena noticed. "You are not heading into town?" she asked. "Later," Daniel replied. That was all. She did not ask why. They walked the trail together again, this time in silence from the first step. No adjustment needed. No correction made. At the ridge, Lena stopped. "This is far enough," she said. Daniel nodded. She turned back toward the cabin. Daniel watched her go for a moment longer than usual. Then he turned the other way. He did not go into town. Instead, he adjusted the sled and redirected the dog toward a narrower trail that ran along the tree line, one most people did not use unless they had reason. The trail led toward a cluster of cabins farther out, less maintained, closer to the river. Seasonal homes, some empty, some not. Daniel stopped at the first one. The roof had taken on too much weight overnight. Snow sagged along one side, pressing unevenly. Nothing dramatic, nothing urgent, just enough to matter. Daniel tied the dog and climbed the ladder leaning against the side of the cabin. He moved slowly, deliberately, distributing weight as he shoveled. He cleared only what needed to be cleared. He did not fix what had not yet broken. When he finished, he stepped down, removed his gloves, and placed the ladder back where it had been. He left no mark. At the next cabin, the door had warped slightly. The latch caught, but did not settle. Daniel adjusted it with a single turn of the screw he carried in his pocket. He tested it once. Then he stopped. He did not knock. By the time he returned toward the ridge, the light had shifted. Not brighter, just different. Lena was outside the cabin, loading her bag into the back seat of her car. She had cleared snow from the windshield in short, efficient strokes. Daniel approached without sound. She noticed him when he was close enough to register his presence, not interruption. "You went the other way," she said. "Yes," Daniel replied. She closed the trunk and leaned against the car briefly. There was a pause. "I checked the latch," Daniel said. "On the third cabin past the river." Lena looked at him, not confused, not grateful. "They will notice," she said. "Not today," he replied. She considered that. "You did not tell them," she said. "No," she nodded once. "That is good," she said. Daniel did not respond. She opened the driver's door, then stopped. "There is a family in the second cabin," she said. "They prefer to handle things themselves." Daniel nodded. "I did not touch theirs." She met his eyes briefly, then looked away. "That matters," she said. He did not ask why. She got into the car and started the engine. It hesitated once, then turned over. Daniel stepped back. She rolled the window down halfway. "I will be back in a few days," she said. Daniel did not assume anything from the statement. "The road will be better," he said. "Yes." She waited, as if there might be something else to add. Then she shook her head slightly, more to herself than to him. "You do not need to do that," she said. Daniel considered his words carefully. "I know," he replied. She nodded. "That makes it different," she said. The engine warmed. Snow began to fall again, light, uncommitted. Lena shifted the car into gear. Before pulling away, she reached into the back seat and removed the wool blanket Daniel had given her on the first night. She stepped out and placed it on the hood of the truck, folded neatly. "You will need it," she said. Daniel did not protest. She drove off slowly, tires finding their line without drama. Daniel watched until the road took her out of view. He stood there for a moment longer, the blanket still on the hood. Then he folded it and returned it to the cabin. The routine resumed. Coffee ground. Fire adjusted. Tools returned to their places. Nothing had changed in a way that could be named easily. And yet, something had shifted. Daniel had acted where no action had been required. Lena had noticed and chosen not to accept it as leverage. The gesture left no debt, no story, no proof. Only a question, quiet and unresolved, settled into the space where certainty used to be. In Alaska, that kind of shift did not announce itself. It waited. The snow returned without commitment. It did not fall hard enough to claim the day, only enough to change how long things took. Steps slowed. Edges softened. Sound carried differently. Daniel Frost noticed the shovel first. It leaned against the porch where he had left it after clearing the steps that morning. The handle angled slightly away from the wall, not enough to fall, just enough to register as unfinished. He paused there longer than necessary, then set it back into place, aligning it with the others. Inside, the cabin held the same temperature it always did. The clock ticked. The fire maintained a low, steady burn. The husky slept near the hearth, one ear tuned to movement that did not arrive. Daniel moved through his routine without interruption. Coffee, tools checked, rope coiled and returned to its hook. He wiped the table once, then again, as if testing whether it needed more attention. It did not. By late afternoon, the light thinned. The window framed a road that had not fully decided what it was yet. Passable in sections, unreliable in others. A truck passed once, then nothing. Daniel stepped outside and checked the latch on the shed. It held. He closed the door and did not lock it. A small deviation he corrected immediately. He turned the key and pocketed it, then removed it again and placed it on the nail by the door. The key remained visible. When Lena Harper returned, it was not announced by sound. Her car appeared at the bend in the road, slow, careful. Tires found their line. She parked farther from the cabin than before, leaving space where there had not been space previously. Daniel saw her through the window and waited. She stepped out, pulled her coat tighter, and stood by the car for a moment longer than necessary, as if counting something silently. Then she walked toward the cabin, her pace even, not hurried. Daniel opened the door before she reached it. He did not step outside. "You made it," he said. "Yes," she replied. They stood there, the threshold between them holding. "The snow turned," she said. "Briefly," Daniel replied. She nodded and stepped inside. The cabin adjusted again, but not completely. The air shifted, as if accommodating a presence it recognized but had not planned for at this hour. Lena set her bag down near the door, not in its usual place. Daniel noticed, but did not move it. She looked toward the table, then the window. "I will not stay long," she said. Daniel nodded. "The road will close again tonight." "Yes." They did not sit. Daniel poured water into the kettle. Lena reached for a mug, then stopped. She placed it back on the shelf and folded her hands loosely at her sides. The kettle boiled. Daniel poured 2 mugs anyway and set one near her, not pushing it closer. She watched the steam rise. "Thank you," she said after a moment. He inclined his head. They drank standing. The husky rose and crossed the room, stopping short of Lena before sitting, as if checking whether the distance was still correct. She adjusted her stance slightly, giving him room. He lay down. Daniel set his mug down and picked up the rope he had coiled earlier. He checked it once, then placed it back. The action served no immediate purpose. Lena noticed. "You were going out," she said. "Earlier," Daniel replied. She waited. "And now?" she asked. Daniel considered the rope. "Later," he said. She nodded, as if that explained something without explaining anything. There was a pause long enough for the clock to mark several seconds. "I brought something," Lena said. She reached into her bag and removed a small tool, wrapped in cloth. She unrolled it carefully and held it out. A screwdriver, the handle worn smooth. "Familiar." "The latch on the shed by the river," she said. "It will need this size." Daniel took it without comment. He weighed it in his hand, then placed it on the table beside the key. "I will return it," he said. She shook her head once. "Keep it there," she said, "where you can see it." Daniel left it where it was. They stood in the quiet that followed, neither moving to fill it. Outside, the snow shifted direction again, tapping lightly against the glass. The sound did not demand attention, only acknowledgement. Lena stepped closer to the window. "I will go before dark," she said. Daniel did not look at the clock. "Yes," he replied. She turned toward the door, then stopped. "You do not have to do everything before it breaks," she said. It was the closest she had come to a suggestion. Daniel met her eyes briefly. "I know," he said. She nodded, satisfied that the boundary had held. At the door, she reached for her gloves and paused. One was missing. Daniel noticed and crossed the room, retrieving it from the bench where she had set it earlier. He handed it to her without comment. Their fingers did not touch. She took it and pulled it on. Outside, the light had begun to fade, but not completely. Enough to make distance uncertain. Enough to require attention. Lena stepped down from a porch and turned back once. "The shovel," she said, glancing toward it. "It is where it belongs," Daniel replied. She nodded. She walked back to her car, her pace unchanged. Daniel watched from the doorway, not following, not retreating. The engine started. The car moved off slowly, tires quiet on snow. Daniel closed the door and returned to the table. He looked at the key, the screwdriver, the rope. 3 objects, all visible. None urgent. He left them there. Sometimes the only tension that matters is not created by conflict, but by timing that does not align. By actions that arrive a moment too early or remain a moment too late. In places like this, where sound carries and space holds memory, it becomes possible to notice those small misalignments. To stand with them. To let them breathe. And in that quiet, without resolution or demand, the body learns to slow with the land. The next morning arrived with a cleaner light. Not brighter, just steadier. The kind that made edges visible without softening them. Daniel Frost woke at his usual hour. The routine met him where it always did. Fire, kettle, grinder. The screwdriver still lay on the table beside the key, exactly where he had left it. He had not moved it. Outside, the snow had compacted overnight. The road showed itself more clearly now, a narrow line between banks that had decided to hold. Daniel finished his coffee and stepped out. The husky followed, stopping at the edge of the porch as Daniel checked the weather by feel, not forecast. The air carried no urgency. Lena Harper arrived shortly after. This time, she parked closer to the cabin. Not by much. Enough to shorten the distance without erasing it. Daniel was tightening the latch on the shed when she approached. He did not look up immediately. She waited until he finished. "That one holds now," he said. "Yes," she replied. She set a small bag on the bench outside the cabin and did not open it. "I will be in town most of today," she said. "If the weather shifts, I will not come back until tomorrow." Daniel nodded. "That is practical." She acknowledged the word with a brief smile that did not ask for anything further. Inside, the cabin held the same order. Nothing had been rearranged. Nothing had been improved. Lena poured herself coffee without asking. She used the mug with the hairline crack and placed it back in the same spot when finished. They stood by the table, not facing each other, but aware of the shared space. "There is a delivery coming this afternoon," Lena said. "Medical supplies. They will leave it at the lodge if the road stays open." Daniel considered that. "If it closes," he said, "they will turn back." Yes. They let the possibility sit without adjusting to it. After breakfast, Daniel gathered his tools. He did not take the screwdriver from the table. Lena noticed. "You will need that," she said. Daniel shook his head once. "Not today." She accepted the boundary immediately. "All right." They walked part of the trail together, then split where it narrowed. No discussion. No signal. Daniel headed toward the river cabins again, this time stopping only at the shed Lena had mentioned the night before. He tested the latch with the screwdriver she had brought, turning it once, then stopping. He did not adjust further. He placed the tool back on the table when he returned. Lena came back in the late afternoon, earlier than expected. The light had shifted again, but the weather had not committed. She stood in the doorway for a moment, reading the room. "You did not go far," she said. "No," Daniel replied. She set her bag down, then paused. "I'm not staying," she said. "I only needed to return this." She reached into the bag and removed a folded map, edges creased from use. She placed it on the table, near the key and the screwdriver. "The trail by the east ridge," she said. "It washed out last spring. The markings are wrong now." Daniel looked at the map. He did not open it. "Thank you," he said. She waited. "I will not follow it without checking," he added. She nodded. "That is all I wanted to know." They stood there, the 3 objects between them. Key, tool, map, none of them urgent. All of them practical. Lena moved to the window and checked the sky. "I will be back in 2 days," she said. "Earlier if the road holds." Daniel did not respond immediately. "Do not wait," he said finally. She turned toward him. "I will not," she replied. There was no tension in the exchange, only clarity. Before leaving, she noticed the gloves Daniel had set near the door. One was folded slightly differently than the other. She adjusted it, then stopped herself and returned it to its original position. She caught Daniel watching. "I almost moved it," she said. "I saw," he replied. She smiled once, brief and unguarded. "Good." Outside, the air had cooled again. Lena pulled her coat tighter and stepped down from the porch. Daniel remained where he was. At the car, she paused and turned back. "You keep things where you can see them," she said. "Yes," Daniel replied. "That makes it easier to know what not to touch," she said. He considered that. "Yes." She left without further comment. When the cabin settled again, Daniel stood at the table and looked at the map. He unfolded it carefully, traced the altered trail with his finger, then refolded it and placed it beneath the key. The screwdriver remained visible. The routine resumed, unchanged in structure but adjusted in shape. Boundaries had not narrowed the space between them. They had clarified it, and in that clarity, trust did not announce itself. It simply became possible to move without checking over one's shoulder, to leave and return without explanation, to know where the edge was and stay within it. In Alaska, that was often enough. The disruption arrived without urgency, not as weather, not as noise, as absence. Daniel Frost noticed it when the clock stopped ticking. He stood at the counter with the kettle in his hand, waiting for the sound that usually arrived before the water did. It did not. The cabin held its breath. The fire dimmed, then steadied into a lower glow that belonged to wood. Alone. The power had gone. Daniel set the kettle down. He did not reach for a flashlight. He opened the drawer instead and took out 2 candles, placing them where the light would land evenly. He lit them one at a time. Outside, the snow continued. Inside, the routine adjusted. Coffee was finished over the fire. Slower. He waited longer between pours, letting the surface settle fully before setting the mug aside. The difference was small. It mattered. Later, as he stepped onto the porch, his phone vibrated once. Not a call. A message. One line. No greeting. A number he did not keep saved. Daniel read it, then slid the phone back into his pocket without responding. He did not delete it. He did not carry it inside. He left it on the bench near the door, face down. Pass came quietly, then stayed where it was. By mid-morning, the husky began to limp. Not dramatically. A subtle favoring of the back leg after a run along the tree line. Daniel noticed immediately and shortened the route without breaking stride. He knelt and checked the paw. Ice lodged between pads. Nothing broken. Nothing urgent. He cleared it carefully and stood. They turned back. At the cabin, Daniel dried the dog's paw and wrapped it loosely. The husky accepted the adjustment and lay near the fire, watching the door as if nothing had changed. The routine continued. Lena Harper arrived late that afternoon, earlier than expected, later than usual. She parked at the edge of the clearing and waited in the car for a moment before stepping out. Daniel opened the door when she reached the porch. "Power's out," he said. She nodded. "I saw." Inside, the candles cast a different geometry. Shadows moved more than usual. The cabin felt smaller, closer. Lena noticed the phone on the bench. "You did not answer," she said. No, she did not ask who it was. She noticed the husky's wrap. "He will be fine," Daniel said before she asked. "Yes," she replied. She took off her coat and placed it over the chair, not the hook. She stood closer to the table than before, closer than the boundary they had held for days. Not crossing it, just testing its flexibility. "I brought soup," she said. She set the container down. Daniel did not comment on it. They ate by candlelight. The soup warmed slowly. Brie tore unevenly. The quiet felt denser, but not heavy. Outside, the wind shifted. Snow began to fall harder, not enough to trap them, enough to complicate the road. Lena checked the window. "I will wait," she said. Daniel nodded. "Yes." They sat without speaking for a long while. Then, from the direction of the lodge, a light flickered. Someone moving. A truck stopped briefly, then stalled. Lena noticed first. "That is not normal," she said. Daniel stood and reached for his coat. They did not discuss it. They walked together toward the sound. The snow thicker now, the light less reliable. The truck sat angled near the bend, engine running unevenly. A man stood beside it, one hand braced on the hood, breath visible. Daniel stopped several yards away. "Battery's cold," the man said, without looking up. Yes, Daniel replied. He did not approach the engine. He did not open the hood. He pointed once, indicating where the truck needed to sit if it was going to turn over again. The man followed the direction without question. Daniel waited. After a minute, the engine caught. The truck idled, then steadied. The man nodded once. "Thank you," he said. Daniel did not respond. He turned back. Lena watched the exchange without stepping closer. They walked back toward the cabin. Snow continued. The near rescue ended unfinished, as if it had never meant to become more. Inside, the power returned with a soft click. The clock resumed its sound without acknowledgement. Daniel blew out one candle, left the other burning. The phone on the bench vibrated again. Daniel did not pick it up. Lena noticed, then looked away. Later, as the snow eased, Lena stood and reached for her coat. "I should go before it freezes again," she said. Daniel nodded. "Yes." At the door, she paused. "You did not go all the way," she said. "No," Daniel replied. "That was enough," she said. He did not answer. She stepped outside, then turned back once. "Some things do not need finishing," she said. Daniel met her eyes briefly. "I know." She left. When the cabin settled again, Daniel returned the phone to his pocket without reading the screen. He checked the Husky's wrap, adjusted it slightly, and returned to the table. The routine repeated. But now, it carried small variations. Candlelight remembered. Snow deeper at the edge of the clearing. A message unread. A leg wrapped and healing on its own. Movement had entered the days, then passed through. Nothing had been taken. Nothing owed. In Alaska, that was how change arrived when it intended to stay quiet. The consequence did not arrive as loss. It arrived as delay. Daniel Frost noticed it when the fire burned lower than expected before noon. Not dangerously low, just enough to require attention earlier than planned. He adjusted the damper and added a log, choosing a smaller one than usual, the kind meant to hold heat without rushing it. The decision shifted the rest of the morning by minutes that accumulated quietly. Outside, the road had frozen overnight. What had been soft now held. What had been passable now resisted. Daniel checked the shed inventory and made a short list in his head. Flour, lamp oil, dog feed, nothing urgent, everything necessary. The mist errand would wait. He prepared coffee as usual, but the water took longer to heat. The kettle sat on the fire instead of the stove. He waited. He did not rush it. The husky shifted near the hearth, testing his wrapped leg. Daniel noticed and shortened the planned walk again, adjusting the route without comment. The day moved slower. By mid-morning, Lena Harper arrived on foot, her car left at the edge of the road where ice held more reliably. She carried a small pack, light enough not to argue with. "You did not go in," she said after stepping inside. "No," Daniel replied. She noticed the lower fire, the smaller log. "You will need more by tonight," she said. "Yes." She set her pack down and unzipped it, removing 2 items. A loaf of bread, a bag of rice. She placed them on the table and zipped the pack closed again. "That is not necessary," Daniel said. She did not look up. "It is temporary," she replied. He did not push it away. He did not thank her. They shared a meal made from what was already there. No addition. No substitution. Later, Daniel stepped outside to clear ice from the steps. The work took longer than snow. He chipped carefully, listening to the sound it made when it cracked. Each strike measured. Each movement deliberate. Lena stood near the door, watching the sky rather than him. "I will stay until the road softens," she said. Daniel nodded. "Yes." Inside, the cabin adjusted again. Not by warmth, by presence. They moved around each other with practiced awareness now. When Daniel reached for a tool, Lena waited. When Lena crossed the room, Daniel shifted slightly without being asked. The phone on the bench vibrated once. Daniel did not look at it. By late afternoon, the temperature dropped again. The fire needed tending sooner than planned. Daniel added another log, this one heavier. He watched the flames adjust. Lena noticed the choice. "You will use more tonight," she said. "Yes," Daniel replied. She considered that. "I can bring more tomorrow," she said. Daniel met her eyes. "You do not need to." She nodded. "I know." They let the statement sit without contest. As evening settled, the light outside flattened. Snow did not fall. Ice held. The quiet thickened. Dinner was simpler than usual. rice, soup thinned with water. Enough. They ate without speaking. Afterward, Daniel rinsed the pot and set it upside down. Lena wiped the counter and left it where it was. They sat near the fire, not close enough to touch, close enough to share heat. The husky shifted again, then settled. You missed the delivery, Lena said, not accusing. Yes, Daniel replied. It will come again, she said. Yes. There was no reassurance in the exchange. Only fact. Later, Daniel stood and checked the door, then the window. The road remained still. The night held. He reached for the screwdriver on the table and turned it in his hand once, then set it back. Lena noticed. You did not use it, she said. Not yet, he replied. She nodded. The fire burned steadily now, but lower than usual. The heat held, but only just. Daniel adjusted his chair closer to the hearth. Lena followed suit, mirroring the distance without comment. The consequence of the day was not dramatic. It did not demand apology. It did not demand explanation. It asked for time. It asked for attention. It asked for restraint. Later, when Lena stood to leave, she hesitated. The road may not open tomorrow, she said. Daniel nodded. It will open when it does. She looked at him, then at the fire. You do not mind waiting, she said. Daniel considered the words carefully. I planned for it, he replied. She accepted that. When she stepped outside, the cold pressed in immediately. Daniel handed her the wool blanket from the hook by the door. She paused. You will need that tonight, she said. Daniel shook his head once. I have enough, he replied. She did not argue. She took the blanket and wrapped it around her shoulders. That night, the fire burned lower than usual. The heat held, but only just. Daniel woke once to add a log, choosing carefully. The cost of the day remained small, but it was real. And in Alaska, that was how trust learned its weight. Morning arrived unevenly. Not later. Not earlier. Just different. Daniel Frost woke at his usual hour, but he did not stand immediately. He remained where he was for several seconds longer than the routine required, listening to the fire settle and the clock resume its steady work after the night. The cabin was warm enough. Barely. He stood and crossed the room, not toward the kettle, but toward the window. Outside, the road had softened overnight. Ice gave way in patches. The surface was no longer holding the way it had been. Daniel noticed the difference and did nothing with it yet. He prepared coffee more slowly than usual, not by intention, by sequence. The grinder paused once between turns. The water waited longer before pouring. He let the mug sit untouched for a moment after filling it. The screwdriver still lay on the table. So did the map. The key remained where it had been placed days earlier. Lena Harper woke quietly and folded the blanket before standing. She moved toward the counter, then stopped when she noticed the delay in Daniel's routine. She waited without stepping closer. You're not going out yet, she said. Daniel nodded. Later. She accepted that without comment. Breakfast was simple. Bread, coffee, nothing added, nothing withheld. Afterward, Daniel gathered his coat. He checked the weather again, then reached for the rope. His hand hovered briefly, then moved past it. He left the rope on the hook. Lena noticed. You will walk, she said. Yes, Daniel replied. She nodded once, satisfied with the boundary the choice implied. They stepped outside together. The husky remained inside, resting his leg. Daniel closed the door gently behind them. The air had softened. The snow no longer resisted the way it had days before. Each step held, then released. They walked the trail without speaking. Daniel did not take the lead this time. He walked beside Lena, matching her pace instead of setting it. The shift was small. It mattered. At the ridge, Daniel stopped where Lena usually did. He did not move past it. She looked at him. You could go further, she said. Daniel shook his head. Not today. She accepted that. They stood there together, looking out at the stretch of land that opened briefly before closing again. The view had not changed. Their position within it had. Daniel reached into his pocket and removed his phone. He looked at the screen once, then turned it off completely and placed it in the snow beside him. Lena noticed, but did not comment. He did not leave it there long. He picked it up and returned it to his pocket. The act was not about abandonment. It was about interruption. They turned back toward the cabin together. Inside, Daniel moved the screwdriver from the table to the drawer. He did not hide it. He placed it where it belonged. The map followed, folded carefully and set beneath the others. The key remained visible. Lena watched the sequence and understood the distinction. "You are choosing what stays out," she said. Daniel nodded. "Yes." She did not ask why. Later that afternoon, the road opened fully. A truck passed without slowing. The sound lingered briefly, then disappeared. Daniel stood by the window and watched it go. "You could leave today," Lena said. Daniel considered the statement. "Yes," he replied. He did not move. The fire needed tending again. Daniel added a log, this one medium, not the smallest, not the largest. The choice shifted the balance of the evening slightly. Enough to notice. Enough to plan around. Lena gathered her coat. "I will head back before dark," she said. Daniel nodded. "Yes." At the door, she paused. "You are staying," she said. Daniel met her eyes. "For now," he replied. She did not smile. She did not frown. She accepted the precision of the answer. Outside, the light held longer than expected. The sky did not rush toward night. Lena stepped off the porch, then turned back. "You did not ask me to stay," she said. Daniel shook his head. "No," she nodded. "Good." She left without hesitation. When the cabin settled again, Daniel returned to the table and poured himself another cup of coffee. He sat this time. He did not drink. It immediately. The husky shifted closer to his chair and rested his head against Daniel's leg. Daniel did not move him away. The realization did not arrive as thought. It arrived as a choice not made. A rope left hanging. A step not taken. A departure delayed without announcement. In places like this, where silence carried weight and time answered to no one, those choices became visible, not as declarations, as adjustments. And sometimes, noticing an adjustment was enough to widen the space in which a life could move next. The morning returned the way it always did. Light arrived first, thin and unannounced, resting along the edge of the trees before touching the cabin. Snow held the shape it had chosen overnight. The world outside remained consistent, uninterested in what had shifted inside it. Daniel Frost woke before the clock reached its mark. He stood without hesitation, but he did not move immediately toward the kettle. Instead, he opened the door and stepped onto the porch, checking the air before the fire. The cold met him cleanly, without resistance. He stayed there a moment longer than usual, then went back inside. The routine resumed. Water poured into the kettle. Coffee beans measured by hand. The grinder turned, steady, unhurried. The sound filled the cabin the way it always had, but it landed differently now, as if the room had learned how to listen. Daniel prepared breakfast, simple and deliberate. Eggs, bread, butter softened near the fire. He set one plate on the table, then paused. After a beat, he set a second plate beside it, not across, not too close. He sat. The husky shifted and took his place near Daniel's chair, closer than before. Daniel did not adjust him. Outside, a truck passed on the road. Another followed. The sound lingered briefly, then moved on. Daniel finished his coffee and washed the mug, setting it upside down. He left the other plate where it was. He gathered his coat and boots and stepped outside again, this time with intention. He did not harness the dog. He did not take the sled. He walked the trail alone, his pace measured but unassertive. The ridge arrived as it always had. The land opened briefly, then closed again. Daniel stopped there, the same place he had stopped with Lena. He did not move beyond it. He stood, hands at his sides, and let the air settle. When he turned back, he took a different path. Not shorter, not longer, just altered enough to register. Back at the cabin, the day unfolded quietly. Daniel repaired a hinge that had not yet failed. He stacked wood in a slightly different order, heavier pieces lower than before. He checked the shed latch once, then left it alone. The screwdriver remained in the drawer. The map stayed folded. The key was still visible. In the afternoon, Lena Harper did not arrive. Daniel noticed the absence without naming it. He prepared dinner earlier than usual, then waited. When the light shifted, he adjusted the fire, choosing a log that would hold longer without attention. He ate alone, not rushing, not lingering. Later, as the night settled, the wind returned lightly. The cabin responded with familiar sounds. Wood adjusted. Glass cooled. Daniel read by the fire, then closed the book before finishing the chapter. He stood and checked the door, then the window. The road remained open. He did nothing with that information. The phone stayed in his pocket. Silent. Before sleep, Daniel moved the second plate from the table and placed it back in the cupboard. He did not stack it. He left it accessible. The routine closed itself gently. The next morning followed the same pattern. And the next. Lena returned on the third day. She arrived without announcement, her car rolling into the clearing with the same care she always used. Daniel saw her through the window and did not open the door immediately. He finished what he was doing first. When he did open it, she stood at the edge of the porch, not stepping forward. "You stayed," she said. Daniel nodded. "Yes." She looked past him, into the cabin, the table, the fire, the order. "You changed the morning," she said. Daniel did not deny it. "Yes." She accepted that. "I will not stay long," she said. Daniel nodded again. "All right." They stood there, the distance between them unchanged, the understanding within it different. Routine had returned, but it no longer moved in the same sequence. And in Alaska, where the land did not bend to preference or explanation, that was how change made itself known. The night settled without ceremony. Snow did not fall. Wind did not rise. The land held still, as if Alaska had decided to pause rather. Then conclude. Inside the cabin, the fire burned low but steady. Not enough to command attention. Enough to remain present. Daniel Frost stood near the window, looking out at the road that no longer needed watching. The road stayed open. Lena Harper sat at the table, her hands wrapped around a mug that had cooled slowly. She did not drink it. She did not move it away. The warmth was already there. Neither of them spoke. The husky slept near the hearth, his breathing even, the wrap no longer needed. He shifted once, then settled again. Earlier, Daniel had moved one chair slightly closer to the table. Not toward Lena, toward the light. The adjustment was small. It stayed. Lena noticed it when she stood to rinse her mug. She placed it upside down beside the other, aligning the handles. She left space between them. Daniel watched and did not correct it. Outside, the moon rose behind thin cloud, softening the edges of the trees. The cabin window reflected only a faint interior glow. From a distance, it would have been easy to miss. The fire crackled once. Then quiet returned. Daniel reached for the clock and wound it carefully, just enough to carry it through the night. He set it back in its place and stepped away. The routine had found its shape again. Not the old one. Not a new one either. Something in between. Lena moved toward the door and stopped. "I will head back before morning," she said. Daniel nodded. "Yes." She reached for her coat, then paused. "I will come by when the trail opens," she said. Daniel did not treat it as a promise. "All right," he replied. She stepped onto the porch and turned back once. "You do not rush anymore," she said. Daniel considered the statement. "I keep time," he replied. She accepted that and left. The door closed softly behind her. Daniel returned to the table and sat where he had not sat before. He did not pour another cup. He did not reach for his book. He remained still, listening to the sounds that remained after a day had finished using them. The clock ticked. The fire held. The land stayed quiet. In places like this, where survival had always depended on restraint rather than force, the value of a life was measured differently. Not by how much could be taken, not by how quickly something could be fixed, but by how carefully a person learned when to step forward and when to let something remain as it was. Some choices did not need to be explained to be real. Some connections did not need to be named to be honored. Some distances were not gaps, but structures that allowed trust to stand without leaning. The cabin did not ask for more than that. As the night deepened, the light inside dimmed further. Daniel stood and added a single log to the fire, choosing one that would burn long and quiet. He adjusted the damper and stepped back. The warmth settled. Outside, Alaska remained unchanged. Snow, trees, road, sky. The place held, indifferent and patient, as it always had. Inside, something had found a rhythm it could live with. There was no ending to mark, only a place where the story could rest without closing. The fire would still be warm in the morning. The road would still decide its own timing. And when someone returned, The space would recognize them without needing to ask why. For now, that was enough. The cabin stayed lit. The night passed, and everything that mattered remained exactly where it was.